Open your Bibles to the book of Esther, chapter 3. Esther, chapter 3. After these things did a king Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and did reverence Haman, for the king so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, neither did him reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, Why transgressest thou the king's commandment? It came to pass when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for he had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. So in other words, they, there's a lot of ways, but kind of give you an idea. You could say they put names in a hat, which is doubtful, or you could say they used some other way of, all right, what about January? No, February. They went through that all the way through the year until they got to the 12th month. And then not only that, but in verse 8, Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. The king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And notice that phrase, Jews' enemy, that is still carried on even today. When they talk about Haman, he is still referred to as the Jews' enemy, or the enemy of the Jews. And the king said unto Haman, The silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, in the name of King Ahasuerus, as it was written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post unto all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish. You can't get much plainer than that. He wanted them annihilated. All Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. Now, one of the things I'm trying to do on Sunday night, we're going through various Bible characters, and even I've done it occasionally on Sunday morning, but especially on Sunday night, I'm trying to not only look at the Bible characters themselves, but I'm also trying to make some applications. But then one of the things that I'm trying to do is to teach some Old Testament history to those who do not know it, and to remind those who have heard it and maybe have forgotten it. Old Testament history is a vital part of understanding the New Testament. So when I give all of the backgrounds and all of the history, I'm not just trying to fill time, I'm actually trying to teach you Old Testament history as well as the characters and their applications. Now, we've already looked at Haman, at least in part. We saw a little bit of Haman when we looked at Esther. We saw quite a bit of Haman when we studied Mordecai. But tonight I want to look specifically at Haman himself. And as I began getting into it, I saw things that even I had not seen before, and lessons that I think all of us need to learn. Very quickly review, we saw that he was a serious narcissist. And if you remember, he thought only of himself. He thought he was the best of the best. He thought that everybody should bow down at his feet and pay reverence to him because I am Haman. I'm the best. I'm the best. Apparently, and I say apparently by the context and his actions that followed, he let his power go to his head. In chapter 3, he was promoted to second in command directly under the king himself. And from all appearances, as soon as he was promoted, it went straight to his head. It's been said that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Haman is a case of power corrupting him to the point that, well, he just thought he could do anything and get by with it, and nobody dared question him. Many people have been ruined by a promotion. Many people have been ruined as when they were chosen, to be the best guitarist, the best singer, the best soccer player, the best this, the best baseball player. When they become identified as the best of whatever, I've seen it, and I'm sure you have, it went straight to their head. Wow, I'm the best. I never had to worry about that in school. I was, the only reason I got chosen for sports and PE is because it was mandatory, and I was almost always the very last one chosen, and that's only because the coach made them choose me because I was the only one left. I never was the best in sports. I was never the best in looks. I was never the best in talent. But there are other things that can go just as easily to our head. Many people have been completely ruined when they became lifted up with pride after they finally made it in whatever field they were in. I've seen numerous people that totally changed their whole personality. And I'm sure you have met people like that. They were nice, wonderful, down to earth, common, ordinary people until they got that promotion or that recognition, and then suddenly their whole personality changed. I don't know what his personality was before, but it's very evident that after he got promoted, he doubled down on a lot of things that he might have done before, but now he doubled down on them and became unbearable to those around him. Notice his hatred of others. And I've got 2 and 3 are very, very close. But number 2 is he hated other people. He became infuriated, all because Mordecai didn't pay him the respect that he felt he deserved. I am Haman. I deserve you bow down. I deserve you worship me. I deserve that you reverence me. I'm Haman. I deserve all of this. He seemed to have the attitude, especially with Mordecai, how dare you treat me like some common person? I'm Haman, second to the king, second most powerful man in the whole kingdom. I'm better than you puny lowlifes. You ever met somebody that thought they were better than everybody? Yeah, I've run across a few of those, and I guess I've got enough Mordecai in me that the more they try to make me bow down, not physically, but bow down and reverence them, the more determined I become not to. I said, you're stubborn. I've heard that a lot lately, especially from my wife. By the way, this last episode, let me give you the moral lesson here. Listen to your wife the first time. It's much, much easier than going through all the other. But Haman said, I am better than you puny lowlifes down there. I remember, wow, couldn't believe I remembered this. This happened many years ago. Probably the best I can figure, it was probably around 40, 41, 42, 43 years ago. I was at a conference and there was a preacher there, and he had earned his doctorate degree. He earned it. It wasn't an honorary degree. He earned it. And I made a statement, and it's like, what do you know, you dumb preacher? And he began to dress me down with his education, and he began to show me how wrong I was on certain things, and it's like, you know what, you got a doctorate, but you're still an idiot. I don't know why that hit my brain this afternoon, but he had the attitude, I am Dr. So-and-so. By the way, since then, I've noticed in some of his writings, he's taken doctor off of his name now, which is a good thing. But I'm better than you. I live in a nicer house than you. I have a better job than you. Had another man in that same time frame. We were talking one day, and he wasn't a preacher, he just a member of the church there. And he looked at me, and I guess we were still in Indiana, and we were struggling. I mean, we were struggling. And I said something about money, and he looked at me and he said, I make more in one day than you make in a month. And it's like, whoopee! It doesn't make you any better than me. It doesn't make you any smarter than me. It doesn't mean that I should bow down. Oh, excuse me, Your Highness, you make 30 times what I make. Doesn't make you any better or any different than me. We're still both bleed red. We still put our pants on one leg at a time. We still have all of the other characteristics. And how much money he made, literally, he looked at me and said, I make more in one day than you make in a whole entire month. And I just thought, so? So? What does that mean? So many people, when they make it, it changes them. But he hated the Jews so much. He hated a whole nation of people because of his hatred for one man. He hated Mordecai, and by extension, the whole nation of Israel. He hated them so much that he went to the king, lied to the king, said there's a bunch of people out there that are not worthy of living. They are dispersed. They do not recognize the king. They do not recognize his laws. And we need to kill them. Now, I don't know if you caught it lately, but the way our country is going right now, if we continue at the present rate that we're going right now, it won't be but a very few years till they'll be killing us if they get their way. And certainly we're praying they don't and all of that, but they hate Christians so much they would kill every one of us if they could. But he lied and convinced the king that every one of them, men, women, children, everybody should be killed like a common fly or roach. He would be doing the kingdom a huge favor if we just exterminated all of these Jews. Our country would be so much better off. And he convinced the king to sign a decree that on the 12th month, 13th day of that month, every Jew in all 127 provinces was to be killed on that day. He especially hated Mordecai, and his hatred only grew day by day. Every time he passed by, every time Mordecai stood, instead of bowing down, his hatred just grew more and more and more, so much that he had a gallows built to kill Mordecai immediately rather than wait for the 12th month and kill him with everyone else. His hatred was such that he just couldn't wait 12 more months. He had to do it now. I want to look at his hatred just a little bit more. Remember when the decree went out, I touched this the other couple of weeks ago. The decree went out. Mordecai sent to Esther and said, you have to go in and talk to the king and try to reverse this order. Esther hesitated. Finally, Esther agreed to go in to the king's private chambers, knowing that when she opened that door, if he didn't hold out the golden scepter toward her, she would be beheaded right on the spot. Knowing that, she finally agrees to go in and talk to the king. The king recognized that for her to risk her life, something had to be really, really important. You don't just risk your life over nothing. So he extended the golden scepter, invited her into his private quarters, and asked her what is so important that you risk your life to talk to me? And she said, I want you and Haman to come to my palace tonight for dinner. Can you imagine? Well, we don't have to imagine. We know how Haman reacted. Her only request, she risked her life to simply ask that the king and Haman come to her house for dinner. Well, at that first night, she had an elaborate meal with the king, Haman, her, and of course the servants. After the meal, the king asked her again, what was so important that you risked your life to ask me? And her request was, I want you and Haman to come back tomorrow night for dinner. Haman is ecstatic. I mean, he's above cloud 9. He is, wow, of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people in the kingdom, of the hundreds of governors and rulers in the kingdom, out of all the people in the kingdom, Haman and Haman only was invited to dine with the king. Not just once, but twice. He was invited to be the sole guest of the king and the queen. Back when I was back when I was involved in politics, I'm almost completely out. And I remember, and I was very active in a lot of things, county-wise, state-wise. And I remember the day that I got an invitation out of the whole state of Kentucky. They chose 100 preachers out of the whole state of Kentucky to come to the governor's mansion to meet with the governor in his home and sit down and talk to the governor. And my first thought was, did you get an invitation to the governor's mansion? I got an invitation to the governor's mansion. Of course, God had to pop my bubble real quick. It's kind of like I told you. I was invited to the presidential inauguration. I got it 2 weeks after the fact, but, it's like, and so I think you can understand. You're selected out of everybody. You're selected for one of the greatest honors that anyone could possibly have. Do you know the governor has a full-time person who does nothing but take care of the governor's mansion and make sure chairs are set up when he's got a full-time guy. That's all he does. It is make sure that the house is ready when people come and everybody is set up to do whatever they need to do. But Naaman thought, I am special. He comes out that first night. I had dinner with the king and queen. It'd be like, of all the millions of people in America, be like, going back a few years, President Trump calling me and saying, is this Wilbert Ellis? Yes, it is. I want to invite you to dinner with Melania and I tonight. You get the idea. This was a high honor for Haman. And he walks out and he is all full of himself until he gets up and he sees Haman or Mordecai standing instead of paying him reverence. His hatred only grew more and more toward Mordecai. He went home, told his family how special he was in being invited to the queen's palace twice to eat with her and the king. But he then goes on to say that no matter how much I'm blessed, no matter how privileged I am, It does me no good when I see Mordecai standing. I'll come back to that here in just a second or two. He had one of the greatest honors in the kingdom. But he told his wife and his family that it does me no good whatsoever as long as I see Mordecai the Jew. I hate him. I despise him. I hate everything about him. And my hatred is so great, so large, so big, that my hatred for Mordecai destroys the joy of being invited to the king and queen's private meal. His hatred would not allow him to enjoy the sunlight of the privilege for which he had been taken. He was so full of hate, it destroyed his evening, destroyed his meal. So he decided, I'm not going to wait 13 months. I'm going to build a gallows tonight, and I'm going to go to the king and have Mordecai hung first thing tomorrow morning. Some of the things I've noticed over the years. Hatred destroys all joy in a person's life. And I read a book several years ago, and I really wanted to find the book, but I don't remember which book it was, and I couldn't find it in any of them, so I finally got it as close as I could from memory. You can be eating the best steak in the world. If you don't like steak, substitute fish, chicken, whatever. You can be eating the finest meal in the whole world, but your hatred destroys any enjoyment of it. You can be at the top of the ladder, but all you can think about is the person you hate. You ever known anybody that was so full of hate that they were absolutely miserable? It's a known fact, and this was another book that I read years ago. Hate has been known to cause all kinds of heart disease, depression, and a whole host of other genuine medical conditions. Not psychosomatic. These are genuine medical conditions that are brought about by hatred. Hatred turns you into an angry, bitter, complaining, criticizing person. Now think of somebody that you really don't particularly like. Hopefully it's not me, but you find yourself, everything comes out of your mouth is angry, bitter, complaining, criticizing. Why, he didn't part his hair straight this morning. His tie and shirt didn't match. His shoes were not polished. And I mean, we could go right down the list. Everything you can think of, we can't appreciate anything because we're so full of hate that all we see is complaining and criticizing that person, and eventually it spreads to others because hatred is eating us up. Now, I like to listen to people sometimes. Some people. I guess I better qualify that. But you can listen to somebody for a few minutes and you can learn a lot about them. What do you think about so-and-so? Oh, I think he's cruel. He's ignorant. And, well, what do you think about so-and-so? I think she's just full of herself. You can listen to them, and everything that comes out of their mouth is complaining or criticizing someone else. You can mark it down. That person is carrying some kind of anger and bitterness that they cannot see any good in anybody, because hate is just totally consuming them. You can't see anything good in anybody or anything. I'm not going to ask you if you've ever been there, but I can tell you in my life, when I was much younger, I went through a time when I was angry about several things, and I found myself complaining and complaining and complaining. And I found myself, good people, outstanding people, doing an outstanding job and in church or wherever. But I couldn't see anything good, because all I saw was complaining, and all I could do was criticize. Since then, God has brought me through a lot of things, and it's not something that comes easy. You have to work at it and pray and ask God to lead you and guide you and strengthen you. But I try. I don't always succeed, but I try to see the good in people in spite of their faults and maybe their failures. Sometimes you have to look a little deeper for some people than others. Anybody can criticize. Anybody can complain. Any idiot can find fault. And so Haman was so filled with anger and bitterness and hatred that the mere sight of Mordecai sent him into a tailspin. Your hate will gradually spread to other people around you. By the way, if you read the whole chapter in the whole book, it was Haman's family that suggested that he build the gallows. His hatred for Mordecai had carried over into his family, so that his family hated Mordecai, even though they never met him, never saw him, didn't know him. But they're the ones that said, hang him, build the gallows tonight. You know where kids learn a lot of anger? That's a really hard question. You know where kids learn most of their anger? Mom and Dad at home. Now, I know they learn it from other places, but we don't realize my anger affects the church. My anger affects the family. My anger affects my children. My anger affects my friends. Who wants to be around an angry, bitter, constant complaining, constant criticizing person? Do you want to be around them all the time? I don't. I've got a good friend of mine, and we get together as often as we can. And I like to join him for lunch, but because, well, a lot of reasons. But no matter what happens, he always sees something good in it. I like to be around people that are optimistic, people that aren't always complaining. Did you see what she did? Did you see what he did? You know what she did? You know what they did? And always complaining and criticizing. I don't want to be around them because I know from experience they will drag me down. Now, I'll throw this in. It's in my notes, but I won't charge you extra. I maintain that kids are not born hating others because of their skin color. Now, if you keep up at all today, it's called CRT, and I'll have more to say about that later. It teaches kids that if somebody is white, you hate them. I'm giving you the 30-second interpretation, but they teach kids and their CRT is really, really being pushed. I mean, pushed hard by our present president, by the National Teachers Association, the National Education Association. They're teaching it in kindergarten, or they're pushing it to get it in kindergarten. They're training kids to hate other people for no other reason than the color of their skin. Where do kids learn hate? I guarantee you they shouldn't learn it at church. They definitely don't learn it in the Bible. They're not born hating people because of their skin color. In fact, growing up, I didn't know there was a lot of difference between blacks and white. And I grew up down south. I mean, blacks were people. We didn't know that, oh, they're subhuman. Oh, they're Africans. They're not even human. I grew up. You're black, I'm white. We bleed the same. We're the same. Notice Haman's demise. He was publicly humiliated when he had to lead Mordecai around on the king's horse and cry out for everyone to hear that this is what happens to somebody whom the king desires to honor. Totally humiliated. At the second dinner, King asked Esther, "This is the second time you fed us. What was so important that you risked your life for?" And this time, she exposed Haman as a wicked man. She exposed his plan to destroy her and all of her people. And the king became so upset he got up to leave the room. And I went back and double read this. When the king went out, came back in, Haman had gone over to the queen to beg her to intercede on his behalf so that he would not be killed. In chapter 7, verse 8, the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Now, some say he tripped. There's a number of interpretations, but he uses the word fallen upon the bed. Then said the king, "Will he force the queen also before me in the house?" And as the word went out of the king's mouth, the guards, the soldiers, the others, they covered Haman's head, symbolizing that here's a man who has been condemned to die. Well, as it so happened, in chapter 7, verse 9, Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, "Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, 75 feet tall, the gallows which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. And the king said, hang him on his own gallows. Haman had been worshipped and reverenced and bowed down to, but once he was exposed, the king's chamberlains, who I think probably didn't like Haman to begin with, they immediately pointed out, Haman's trying to kill Mordecai, who's your friend, and he built a gallows. And so he was taken out that very night and hung on the gallows. Apparently, several people did not like Haman, but they couldn't do anything about it because the king wouldn't believe them anyway. But once he was exposed and the opportunity came up, they were willing to jump in and expose him for what he was. As I thought of that, I thought of what Paul said in Romans 12:19. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. In other words, put wrath, put it someplace else. Do not try to avenge it yourself, for it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. Then I was reminded of what Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 8:12. Though a sinner do evil 100 times, and his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it shall be well with them that fear God, which fear before him. Do you have a Haman in your life? Someone who thinks their sole purpose of existence is to torture you and make your life miserable, and you want to get even. Paul said, vengeance is mine. It may take 10 years. It may take 20 years. It may take death and eternity, but I will repay, saith the Lord. No ifs. I might repay. I should repay. I could repay. I will repay. Every one of us who are saved can claim that promise when Haman crops up in our life. And then we look around and this person's a liar, cheat. They commit murder. They commit all kinds of crimes. And he does evil 100 times. And it looks like he's going to live almost forever. And it's like, why doesn't somebody do something? Solomon said, I know that it might be well, could be well, should be well. No, it shall be well with them that fear God. Again, it may take 10 years, 20 years. It may be like Paul said, I fought a good fight from the day I was saved till the day I die. It was one long, drawn-out battle. But then he could also go on and say, henceforth, there is laid up for me a crown in heaven, and not for me only, but all those who love his appearing. My life was a constant battle. I was beaten, stoned, you name it, I had it, but I kept on keeping on. And though in this life I had it really, really tough, yet I know for a certainty there's a crown laid up for me in heaven. Now, I want you to ask yourself, is hate for whatever, whoever, fill in the blank, is hate separating you from the joy of fellowship with God. You know, I've learned when I get angry, I can't pray. Reading the Bible, I might as well be reading, some encyclopedia. When I get angry, that anger keeps me from enjoying any kind of joy and fellowship with God. The only way to get around it is to go to God, no excuses, no reasoning. Lord, I am full of anger. Forgive me. And I've had to go back to individuals. I don't know, it probably hasn't been a quadrillion times, but I've had to go back to people individually and say, hey, I want to apologize. Now, whether they forgive me or not becomes their problem. I have freed myself so that regardless of what they do or don't do, I can at least be restored back into the joy and fellowship of God. Number two, are you one of those people that constantly complain about everything and constantly criticize everybody else? I'm not even going to try to answer that one. Number three, do you find yourself tied up in knots because of your hatred towards someone or something? I wear a Fitbit, mainly so I can keep up with my steps, make sure I'm getting my steps in per day, and it even reminds me I'm supposed to get up and walk every hour, just to kind of keep my blood flowing. But one of the features of it is that it also shows me my heart rate. Now, some of you got apples and different things, but when I am angry, my heart speeds up. My insides tighten up. Do you find yourself tied up in knots because of your hatred? You can't sleep at night because all you can think of is that person or thing that did you wrong. You can't eat because all you can think of is your hatred for that individual. Number 4. This is a statement, not a question. If you answered yes to either of those 3 questions, you need to get alone with God. You need to repent. Ask God to take away that hatred. And if you have manifested that hatred, probably ought to go to that person and say, hey, I have hated you with a passion. I've asked God to forgive me. Now I'm asking you to forgive me. Oh, I could never do that. First time I forced myself to do that, I thought the whole world was going to come to an end. It's not easy to go up and admit I was wrong. But sometimes we have to do it. Father, we come tonight. And as we've looked at Haman, who was so full of himself, he didn't have room for anyone else, who was so full of hatred that it dominated his whole life and caused him to do things that a normal person would never think about doing. But when hate takes over, it changes our whole thought processes. And we find ourselves doing things that we despise because hate has taken over our body and our mind. May your Spirit work, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Don't forget, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. Friday morning, ladies, 6:30, here at the church, loaded, ready to pull out for the ladies' retreat. I understand, if I heard correctly, this is the largest number of ladies we've ever had go. And I think that's wonderful. I wish every lady would go. And I'll throw this out. I've said it to a few individuals. I want to start having some family time together, whether it's game night, in the annex or something else. But I never want to take away from what you ladies already have. You've got a great thing going. I don't want to change it. I just want to try to have some family things that we can do together and get to know each other in the church better than just, oh yeah, that's, he sits on the third row from the back. What's his name? Yeah, thank you. So, I want to get things going that will help all of us as a church. Are we still alive?